Hello everyone, welcome to Tip of the Week. So our tennis tip for the week is how can I hit a heavier ball? So what happens a lot of times when we're playing, if we find that we're having a difficult time trying to get control of the point, there could be a couple of things happening here. One, we're not getting the ball deep enough into the court. Two, our ball is too light. There's no heaviness to it. So if there's no heaviness to the ball that we're hitting, it's going to be very easy for our opponent to take control of the point. So it's something we need to work on so that, it makes it much more difficult for our opponent to be able to control the point. And hopefully we can get him on his heels so that we can take control of it. So how can we do that? What are the keys to hitting heavier ball? Well, we need good increments of timing. So in other words, our kinetic chain needs to be correct. We can't have stops in it. If we have stops in it, that's going to cause problems with our production of the shot. Okay. The other thing is key things for when we're hitting the ground strokes, which is what we're going to focus on today, is the ground strokes, is that when we're getting set up, that we actually have that weight and we're loading off the back foot. Okay, so we need to load off the back foot. Obviously, if we're bending more, that's going to give us even a little more so that when we do go forward, the hips go, the racket's going, that we're actually going to, have much more momentum going into the shot. Okay, so when we finish that shot, the weight should be on that front foot. If we're hitting it in the air, we should be landing, but the weight should be on that front foot when we land. Okay, so I'm going to show you some examples today, and some they are actually making the contact and finishing the shot in the air. They're actually up in the air hitting, so their foot's not planted on the ground. Whether it's on the ground or they're in the air, the weight transfer is there and it's transferred onto that front foot. Okay, even though they're hitting in the air. I wouldn't suggest that unless you're a little bit higher level player, because you need to learn to be balanced when you're hitting. Once you've got that and you're consistent with that, then you can start hitting in the air, okay? As you see a lot of the pros do now, okay? A couple of things you're going to notice too is that basically to get more power, we have that loading off the back foot. The hip is going to turn it actually activates that arm racket motion. So it's the hip turn and the racket motion is just lagging a touch behind. You'll notice in some of the examples today, it's the same time. The reason for that is if we're hitting more of a defensive shot. So in other words, say it's a really heavy ball coming to us, right? We want a really good solid contact. So if I'm trying to do that hip just before the racket, I could have problems with stability of the racket, okay? So again, depends on the player that we're playing. If we don't feel their ball's that heavy and we're not having an issue with it, then we can use the hip and then racket, okay? And so you'll see both examples today. The thing we're going to focus on is those three steps though. That we have the loading off the back foot, we have the hip turn, whether it's the same time as the racket moving or just ahead of it, and also that our weight is transferred onto the front foot. So I've got some examples I'm going to show you here. Okay, I'm just going to share the screen. Make sure I get to the right one. Okay. So we're going to start here with Djokovic. So this is in slow motion. Oh, stopped it. Okay. So we see the load off the back foot, hips turning, and now weight's on the front foot. Okay. Do another one here. I think he does both forehands and backhands. Here's a forehand. So again, loading on the back foot, hip turn, okay? And even though, see, he put his foot down now, look at where the weight went to. It went onto that front foot, even though he made his contact off the back foot. Okay, here we go again. So weight, and here's the hip turn. Now that weight's on the front foot. Okay, you see the transfer there. And it's smooth. There's no stops to it. It's a continuous motion. One more on the forehand here. What I like about Djokovic is that he does bend when he hits. A lot of times you'll see, players hit and they're just almost standing upright. with him a lot of times, especially if it's a really heated point, you will definitely see him look at it, see he's bending. He's not standing straight up. He's going to load, right? He loads. Okay. Here comes the hip and the racket, and then weight is on the front foot. Okay, so we're going to stop that one. We're going to go to our next one here. So next one is Roger Federer. Okay, so this is Roger. I think this is just a warm-up. So it's not quite as intense, but we'll still get the idea. I'm going to turn the music off on this one. Okay. So here we go. So he's getting set up. It's a forehand here. Okay. He's really relaxed hitting this. So weight on the back foot. There goes the hip and the racket, and he finishes. So see how the weight is transferred onto the front foot. Even though he's not really bending here, he's finishing on that front foot. So here we go again. So a little bit more motion here, bends a bit more. And then the hip, and he finishes. And again, the weight goes forward. He brings his foot back to recover. Here we go. All right. Weight on the back foot. So he loads off the back foot. Okay. Racket and hip. Okay. And then it transfers over to that other foot. Okay. The biggest thing now today, like, is that hip turn, that you really need to have that racket and hip moving. Okay. Especially if you're doing the open stance. It's the only way you're going to get the weight transfer. So see, he's hitting open stance there. But again, it depends on the situation with Roger. He doesn't always hit like that. He's just relaxed because this is a warm up. So, okay, let me see if I can get this down because, okay, how can I get this down? Can I get this go to the bottom? Okay, let's see if I can stop the screen sharing here for a second and figure out how to move this down. Five. Okay, so we'll share this again. Actually, I guess I'm still sharing it. Okay. And we're going to put this. I'm going to hide this. Okay, so we're going to go with the next one here. The next one is Serena. So let's watch Serena. Okay, so again, she's getting set. And she's loading. Okay, there goes the hip and the racket, and then weight on the front foot. All right. So another one. Again, I really like Serena because she does bend. She's not standing upright to hit. She really gets, you know, more low when she goes to hit, even though that was tougher ball higher up on her. Okay, so you saw the same thing, weight off the back foot, but when she finished, did you notice her foot was in the air? But the weight is still transferred onto that foot. It's in the air. Okay, so here comes another one. Open stance, hip turn, right? Okay, and then foot comes down. All right, so open stance or neutral stance, the weight still has to transfer, so you need to activate that hip. So it's plant, right? The hip turn, and then weight on that front foot or forward. Okay, if she's in the air or she's hitting open stance, right? One more, last one here. Okay, so it's going to her forehand. She gets set, stays low, loading off the back foot. This will be open stance, hip turn. Again, weight finishes on that front foot. Okay, so we're going to stop that one. We have one more. We're gonna see Bianca. Let's see how she does here. This is a few years ago. Okay. This is at the Orange Bowl a few years ago. So let's see what she does here. Hopefully I don't get loading problems. It's been pretty good today. Better than last week anyway. Oh, come on. Oh boy. Here it is, Sandy. This. Okay, so here she goes. So this is in slow motion as well. Okay. Again, really like her foot movement there. She stays low, plant, there you go. Hip turn, right? In the air again. So moving. Okay. And she plants that back foot in the air, but see how her weight, she finishes, she's in the air, but she finishes on that front foot. So the weight has been transferred, right? The tougher ball on the run, plants that back foot. Okay. So that one you can see was more defensive. So it was racket and hip together on that. All right, here we go. And plant, hip turn, finish on the front foot. I think, I'm not sure she did back. I think she does, yeah. Here's a backhand here. Plant, hip turn, see, open stance, but again, the weight is transferred. It's forward, right? Go, one more. Hip is turned and see she, again. So the weight is transferred onto that front foot. In the air, okay, or on the ground, doesn't matter there. Okay, so we're gonna stop this. Okay, and I'm stopping. Okay, it's not stopping. All right, so we're gonna stop that for a sec. Okay, so we're gonna go to just some clips here. So these are just photos. All right, so you can see on this one where we've got Roger first, right? So Roger, we see at this point, okay, I'm gonna make sure I go to the right spot there. I'm all the way down here. Okay, yeah. So we've got the loading here. So this is Roger loading, right? Off the back foot. And then you see the hip turn. So the hip turn is there and weight on the front foot. So that's Roger. Okay. We're gonna go to Djokovic now. So here we go. So you can see he's loading off that back foot, right? Loading off the back foot. Look at the hip. So the hip is turned. His rack is just lagging a bit behind. Okay, so this one here was a more aggressive shot on his part. This is going to give him a heavier ball, more one that he can either attack with. Okay, so hip turn, then the racket. And notice he's in the air when he makes his hit there. But the weight is transferring because look at where he ends up. Okay, so, right? He's on that front foot. So that's Djokovic. See if I can go back up here. We got one more Djokovic now in the backhand. Okay, so same thing on his backhand. Weight is on that back foot. So he loads off that back foot. Okay. Then again, racket hip turning with the racket. You see the racket's lagging behind just a touch. How can I, what happened to my thing here? Oh, there it is, okay. And then here, you see, weight is on the front foot. So the weight transfer there is on the front foot or forward, okay? That was a more neutral stance one for him. Okay, so now we're gonna take a look at the girls. Okay, so there's Serena plant. And you know what I like about this? you'll notice her footwork there. Where's that toe pointing? So she's loaded, she's really well balanced, really well grounded, okay? That foot is pointing horizontal there. So, you know, pretty well planted so that she's solid on her base here. Okay, if it's pointing forward, we're not as stable. You can even try to, like, if you're standing, you can feel you're a lot more solid and balanced when your foot is in that position when you're setting up, either forehand or backhand. Okay, and then we're going to go to here. So you'll notice hip turning, right? Hip turn, and when she goes to hit, okay, even though when she's hitting, you notice how now the weight is transferring onto that front foot. Okay, so we have all three there. The weight on the back foot to load, hip turn, and then transferred to the front foot or forward. Okay, so here we go. All right, so here's Bianca. So Bianca, she's loading off that back foot, right? Again, loading off the back foot. Then you can see, good job here, the hip turn, and weight is transferred onto that front foot. So when she lands, where do you think she's going to land? She's going to land on that front foot, okay, even though she's taking this in the air, right? So like I said, depending on the level of player you are, you don't want to be taking it in the air if you're struggling with a really solid forehand or backhand on the ground. So, okay, we're going to stop the sharing here. All right. So you could see in every one of those clips in the video, the components are there. So we have the planting, right? The weight loading off that back foot. Obviously, the more you bend, like Djokovic bends much more. Same with Serena, she really gets down. That actually is going to give a lot more heaviness to the ball when they're hitting, okay? So if you're struggling with trying to hit a heavier ball and everybody seems to be kind of just teeing off on your shots, then get lower. You got to work on that timing. So it's got to be like a domino effect. You can't be hanging out, you know, planting for like 5 seconds and then turn. It's too slow. It has to be, you know, plant, hip turn, right? Plant, hip turn, plant, hip turn. It's got to be bang, bang, bang. It can't just be, you know, plant and then a few seconds later you turn. It's not going to work as well. You're not going to get the heaviness on your shot. Okay, so it takes time to, again, this is not going to happen overnight. The best thing to do is try and do some shadow stroking slowly, okay, which is what I was going to get at here. So you want your loading foot, the back foot, you're loading weight onto that back foot. You're going to have the hip turn either with the racket or just ahead of the racket. It's just ahead of the racket if you're hitting more of an aggressive shot. So if they've hit a shorter ball or weaker ball, that's when you're going to do that, the hip turn just before the racket moves, or it's going to be racket and hip at the same time if it's a heavier ball coming to you that you're having a harder time with, okay? And then you're going to make sure whether you hit open stance, okay, it doesn't matter, you have to finish, the weight should still be on that front foot when you finish, even if your foot's on the side, because it means that your weight is transferred forward, okay? So the basic things are weight off the back foot, good hip turn, okay? And then when you finish, weight should be forward onto that front foot, okay? So how can we practice this? I was kind of getting at that. To practice this, shadow stroke. So do it without hitting a ball, right? Practice the movements, staying low, move your feet, do like a side shuffle, get yourself set, and then try and do that stroke smoothly but slowly. That's the key. Can you do it slowly? Because a lot of people practice, but it's way too fast, okay? If you're always practicing at the same speed and you can only do it fast, there's a problem, okay? And this is how, if you ever had it happen, if you've played competitively, that, you know, everything's wonderful and fine, all of a sudden your forehand's falling apart. Why is it falling apart? It's falling apart because you don't practice at any other speed. You just practice at one speed all the time, okay? And then you change something, just a little thing. That little thing can make a big problem. So spend time before you get on the court hitting, do some shadow stroking slowly. think about the points we talked about today. If you're trying to hit a heavier ball, stay low, load off that back foot, good hip turn, racket, and then weight on the front foot. You should be able to feel that. You should be able to feel that weight transfer and the hip moving, okay? So five times on the forehand, 5 times on the backhand. Then try it with a side shuffle. See if you can do it, okay? A little bit faster with no stopping. All right, so the key is those 3 things we talked about, that you have loading off the back foot, good hip turn, all right? And that you're finishing with your weight forward or onto the front foot, whether it's open stance or neutral, okay? Or even closed stance on the backhand sometimes, okay? So those 3 things. And just, like I said, vary the speed. Don't just practice fast all the time. Try and really feel that. So when you get into hitting, if you're just doing a warm-up, the warm-up where it's just medium pace you're hitting, you're not trying to overhit the ball, that's a good time to say, okay, do I have the weight on that back foot? Yeah, okay. Okay. And the hip turn, and is the weight on the front foot when I finish. Okay, so those are the checkpoints. So if you're trying to hit a heavier ball, those are the 3 things you need to work on. All right, so that's the tip of the week. I hope you have a great week, and we will see you next Monday.